Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Conquer the Clutter podcast for August the 9th. Wow. Beautiful weather. We're having beautiful weather, and I hope you are too. So before we start today's podcast, I would like to update you on some feedback that I've received from Bwindi Community Hospital. And if I can manage it, I'm going to screen share and show you some pictures. So get out the tissues, folks. This email is from Eliad Amara. He is one of the community liaison people at the hospital. And he sent this email to us. Dear Elaine and everyone who contributed, thank you again for thinking about the babies in this remote area. I hope this finds you well. This is to let you know that we assembled the CPAP machines today and we've started using them right away. Coincidentally, we had a set of twins that were born and were in severe distress. And as soon as we connected the machines to them, both babies started breathing well. And the oxygen saturation levels rose to remove their level of distress. We can never thank each and every one of you enough for providing hope to this community. Kind regards, Eliad and the staff. So that is the first time, people, that when babies were born, and there's never a day when just one baby is born, and the risk factors for problematic pregnancies is very high in remote areas, that they've had to choose which baby would get the oxygen. So I want to take hats off to each and every one of you. All right. Especially, I'm grateful to, as I said, each and every one of you, no matter how much or how little you were able to spare. It all made a difference. And your given name and the initial of your last name will be on the banner that's going to go over the door of the NICU unit at Bwindi Community Hospital. I'm just in the process right now of having that made up. So yes, it was my idea, but you made it happen. I could not possibly have done it on my own. And I want to share their appreciation for you with you. We might not be able, all right, when we see injustice and we see inequity, we might not be able to change everything that needs changing in our lives or in anybody else's, that especially those that we have some compassion for. But we can change. If this demonstrates anything, it demonstrates that we can change what is immediately in front of us. Each and every one of us have some form of challenge. All right, at least one. On a bad day, I've got multiple. And I am so happy to be part of this community that we've developed together to support those who are struggling, whether they're in Bwindi, in Uganda, or whether they are our neighbors in this podcast, and to learn from those who are moving forward with their struggles. They have something to teach us, even if it's only hope. Right now, every one of you who participated in the Conquer the Challenge project, I want you right now to take a bow, and appreciation goes out to you. When I saw those two babies that day when I walked through that door, and only one could have access to sufficient oxygen at a time, I knew that there were other people with a sense of fairness and justice who would feel the same as I did, and who would get behind me, and you did, in big and small ways, and we made it happen. I want you to know that we've crossed that finish line, and I am proud to call each and every one of you companions along that way. Now, back to hoarding and destabilizing setbacks. Okay, so the destabilizing setback, any destabilizing setback, can upset the check and balance strategy of discarding regularly, all right, that each of us has an intent to carry out. Setbacks in life are inevitable. They happen to all of us. Old habits, however, die hard. and it won't take very long to become overwhelmed again. So I want to go through the different life cycles of hoarding occurring. We covered the first hoarding life cycle pattern in the last podcast. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the second. All right. The second hoarding life cycle pattern is to offset infrequent discarding, so we don't get around to it. We have the intent to do it, but it doesn't happen regularly enough for us to stay on top of whatever it is we're dealing with. And it could be by acquiring, our strategy is sometimes to acquire fewer things less frequently. But over time, all this does is create a pattern that takes longer to develop into a hoarded environment. All right, buying or acquiring less isn't the answer. It's that each thing we acquire and that we keep in our environment has to have a home space. And that home space needs to be in the area of our environment where it will be used, not any place where there's a spot to stuff it. All right. So the same potential will lead to extreme hoarding situations given enough time. So acquiring less, but not discarding or resolving regularly is still a path to sooner or later having the same level of hoarding situation. I've worked with many people who started out this way. The pattern of accumulation involves acquiring, rigid saving, but using. All right. People want to get the value. Many people want to get the value from each item. So they ask themselves, how much did I spend on this? And if they feel that they haven't gotten enough use or value from the item, they may not, you may not, do you find yourself unwilling to let it go? All right. Yet they, like sometimes you, mistakenly believe that by holding on to the item, somehow we retain the monetary value that we've expended in acquiring this, even if the item proves out not to be as useful as anticipated. Keeping items is a way of getting one's money's worth, one's value, all right? And discarding happens differently as well. Usually individuals who really feel that this item that hasn't panned out as they hoped, or they're no longer using it, their life, the context of their life has changed, they continue to tell themselves that they're too busy to spend the time it takes to resolve the buildup. And it's true that many of us genuinely have busy lives. All right. And even as true as that is, just ask yourself, are you overcommitting your time and energy? And are you chronically overscheduled? All right. People who engage in this pattern of accumulation and discarding need to reflect on why they keep themselves so busy. None of us is indispensable, and it really should never come at the expense of our own sense of peace and balance. Okay. At its core, keeping busy may serve a purpose, and that purpose may be to distract and help you avoid the priority tasks that are needed to address, right? Ending up in that gradual but perpetual buildup called, sooner or later, hoarding. The repeated pattern of doing this is not just hoarding, it's part of maybe your path to living out this disorder. Have a look at it. It is not serving you well. All right. So the goal Most people's goal is to keep their environment safe and healthy. All right. And when we don't do that, we create a situation. The only thing that's different is the timeline it takes to really get there, where we're vulnerable to the risks that all people who create a hoarding environment face. Fire, you don't even have to be the cause of it, particularly if you lived in attached accommodation. All right. Somebody else can be the perpetrator of the incident, but your place has an excessive fuel load and your place is going up faster than anybody else's. And that means you have less time to exit safely. All right. Also, depending on what you keep, sometimes the off gases will get people long before the flames. Right. And I don't mean to scare tactic here. I'm speaking from experience because I've actually seen this. For you, it's just me telling you a story. For me, I know the faces of the people who have lived this. All right. Flood is another one. All right. Your hot water tank bursts. Something else, a pipe bursts. And whatever accumulation of water or refuse is made available, how much of what you have is absorbent. All right. How much of what you have is absorbent? Because at a certain point, that is going to weigh a whole lot more wet than it ever did dry. So when we're having to cope with life's inevitable setbacks, a third pattern of hoarding involves, and there are three, accumulating, but not much more than the average person accumulates, really, in some cases less, but never discarding anything. Not one thing that enters the environment ever leaves it. Perhaps the person has an elaborate recycling system, but the items never actually make it out of the environment into the recycling bin for pickup. All right, that becomes too big a task. Are you a recycler? But in that not completing the task, is the recycling staying around much longer? Is it building up? All right. Perhaps the person is saving and storing items for others. I've heard this as well. All right. Examples are young children's clothing, all right, and toys for a younger sibling's child or for a neighbor or for fill in the blank. But keeping things for other people and needing to hold on to those things until you have the ideal home or the home you ideally intended for these items, but they stick around. It's the sticking around. Absolute positive intent to share things you don't need, all right, that are in excess with other people, but they have to leave, and they have to leave in a timely way. Otherwise, you are creating a risk for yourself, because when those piles get big enough, they feel overwhelming. All right. And when something feels overwhelming, it takes on a whole new feel. And that is of being overwhelmed yourself and delaying. How many people get stuck in that pattern? All right. Okay. Do you have values and beliefs about your things that aren't working for you? Sometimes we see this, all right, when we have a need to hold on to something or a need to share something. It's a noble way. Is it a noble way of you keeping everything because that last step doesn't get actioned? All right. The situation will probably take a while to develop. That's the only thing that's different, but it will develop into an extreme hoarding environment. Given enough time, and if nothing intervenes, extreme hoarding will occur. People, make today's work today's job. Don't let today's work become tomorrow's job, because tomorrow will have its own set of jobs. And that's another really great way to get overwhelmed. All right. It never gets easier. Just do it now. I say that to myself 25 times a day. Elaine, just do it now. It never gets easier. You put it down, now you've got 2 jobs. All right. So if you see yourself or someone else close to you anywhere on this continuum, please reach out for hoarding informed help sooner rather than later. Even if you have to access it through remote or internet technologies, go back into the podcast recordings, listen to them, remind yourself of the strategies and the tools. Enhance your motivation by reminding yourself that you can do this. You just break it down into doable chunks. It's all there and it's free. No matter what your other challenges are, at this point, after doing this podcast for 3.5 years, there is at least one podcast on any additional complicating factor that you feel is part of your life. Use it. That's why I do it. All right. So, misconception number 7 about individuals who hoard. Have you ever heard this one? There's no good reason that you can't just do it. Just get organized and clean up a little bit every day, right? At a certain point, now generally that's true, but people can reach a point where they are well and truly overloaded, well and truly overwhelmed. So it's not necessarily, it's not a static situation that remains available as a strategy. At a certain point, we disable ourselves, all right? People who hoard or clutter and have gotten to that point of being overwhelmed often have difficulties addressing the problem. And they have those problems for many good reasons. Okay. One of my clients, Kathy, reminded me of an old saying. I'd never heard it before. I thought she was so clever. Denial is not just a river in Egypt, is what Kathy said one time. But you know what? Denial can feel like a friend. It can feel legitimate. How is it working for you, though? Because if it was true, if it was a strategy, all right, you wouldn't have a negative downside from it. Are you in a situation now where you're only asking yourself the questions that you feel able to accept or deal with? Right. Have you gotten to that point? Because that is not an unfamiliar situation to be in. I firmly believe that we can only deal with the things that we feel competent, we know how to do, and we have the resources to help us do it. Right? Those 2 things are the balancing act for being able to move forward. If the answers are too difficult, avoidance and distraction can feel like an ally. Denial and procrastination serve a purpose. They are buffers, and they buffer us from bigger fears. The fear of being incapacitated by that sense of being overwhelmed. All right. And all of these other factors that set in when we're overwhelmed interfere with our best mental tools. Unfortunately, those are the mental tools, the ability to make a doable plan, to break it down into doable chunks, given whatever ability we have, time, energy, finances, whatever it is. And then in small chunks, work that plan. That sense of being overwhelmed, all right, are the very mental tools that we need the most. Our executive function part of our brain, for instance, that is command central, all right, which is the way our brains put things together in workable order. Here's a little test. Do you ever find that you set out to do something and you lose track of where you are, what you're doing? That doesn't necessarily just have to be ADHD. It's made worse by ADHD or ADD, all right? But it's true of depression. It's true of anxiety. It's true of little tiny bits of each and every one of those in some balance, creating a sense of being overwhelmed. We need to keep things in doable portions so that our brains can give us the ability to face things and accomplish them in a workable order. In order to help us, those types of behaviors are things that are very necessary in cluttered or hoarded situations, all right? Being able to make that plan, break it down into doable chunks, break it down even further when it's necessary, and do smaller portions of those chunks, but every day to clear away some of it gives us such a sense of accomplishment, keeps us reminded that we're still in the game, even if at this point we're limping a bit, all right? And those same tools and strategies, they involve sorting things out, making decisions, thinking matters through, all right? In Conquer the Clutter, Strategies to Identify, Manage, and Overcome Hoarding, I developed a really doable system for sorting, that every single thing we have a relationship with. An active relationship, we love it, we want to keep it, or a passive relationship, we just haven't gotten around to dealing with it and making a decision. They fit on a continuum from 1 to 10. And I strongly suggest that you use that strategy. Make sure that you know what your 1, 2, 3s are. Those are the things that when you see them, you think, there you are. You can't imagine life without it. They have really significant meaning to you. In some way, they fortify you, all right? Mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, they fortify you. I've never, in 22 years, had a situation where every single one of the 1, 2, 3s that somebody recognized, there wasn't a home space, a reasonable, accessible home space for. All right. Go to the other end of the spectrum there. That's the next easiest, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. Now, why 7, 8, 9, 10? Okay, I'm going to tell you a little secret here. When I developed this system, I wanted to give people a really subtle message that probably by the time you're in a hoarded environment, more things are going to go than are going to stay. All right. Because it's, again, in 22 years, I've never had a situation where every single thing the person had was of equal importance. These are the things that you look at and you think, something's got to go. And clearly it does, because I'm overwhelmed and I have a hoarded environment. Can't move around. I can't put things away. I can't access things. It's not going to be the 1, 2, 3s, those things that have significant meaning to me. Not going to be that. It's going to be one of you folks. All right. And then take the best example of the most important thing that is a number 1, and take the best example of something that is a number 7, just by inches doesn't make the cut. And everything else, run the best example of the number 1 over it. And if it sings to you and says, yes, yes, I'm so close to being a number 1, then just set it aside. But if it is nowhere in the ballpark, as far as your awareness that it's that important, do yourself a favor, let it go. Just let it go. All right. Don't overthink it. Just let it go. Because the highest probability is that even if you have a need for that thing, you have something else that will substitute. That's been my experience in 22 years. Yeah, maybe that thing isn't there, but you have 1 or 2 other things that will serve the purpose. All right. So we want to arrive at better options, right? On deciding and developing the plan so that we can do what? So that we can stop thinking about the plan, stop planning the plan, and start following the plan. Start implementing it through step by step, little tiny baby steps, all right, to conclusion. Problem solving along the way. What do I do with this? Where can I share this? Is this even of a type that I can pass this on to somebody? Is there anybody I know who would really benefit from this? All right. Don't hold on to it. Pick up the phone and call the person and ask them, are you open to having this? Can you stop by and pick it up? Don't give yourself another job. You have enough jobs. All right. And don't delay the exit process. Now, into every life, a little rain will fall. And sometimes, depending on the point in your life, it will be followed by sleet and driving hail. Life happens. So when hiccups happen, as they will, life is like that for all of us. Don't allow yourself, listen to this, when you find yourself stuck in an endless loop, all right, ask yourself the right questions. We ask ourselves questions while processing our things. And these questions can lead, depending on what kind of questions they are, can lead to endless questioning if we have no answers. Here's the way out of that. If you find you're going around and around and around, even though you have the best of intentions, you're giving it your best effort. 1, slow down. Stop beating your head against a stone wall. Slow down. Take a few deep breaths, because this sounds like so hokey, right? Take a few deep breaths, but it isn't. We need to really oxygenate ourselves so that at a cellular level, parts of our body that can work better for us have the oxygen they need, just like these little babies. You're not that different from the little babies. When you're going around and around and around and around, all right, and having to avoid things because you can't work your way through it, stop, slow down, take a few deep breaths. The more frustrated and overwhelmed we get. Have you ever noticed? All right, take a break, but go back to it. The more frustrated and the more overwhelmed we allow ourselves to get without taking responsibility for managing ourselves, the worse the problem seems. But it isn't. It's still the same problem. It's that we are not engaging in appropriate self-care, managing ourselves, the machine that is us, all right, to be able to do the work. All right. It can feel like you're walking through mud up to your hips. And I know that. I hear people tell me that while trying to make progress sometimes. You start to work on piles, and by the time, it's interesting how many people in 22 years have told me, you know, Elaine, by the time I pick up the 3rd or 4th item, we are not making connections, all right? It's just overwhelming, and I can't figure out what to do with it. Go back, re-energize, and then go back and do one thing. One thing. Look for a 1, 2, 3. Don't go at it like you are being deprived of things or that you're going to have to give something up. Don't come at it from the negative. All right, come at it from the positive. Where are the jewels? The first thing when you're overwhelmed, because those jewels will always sing to you. All right, those 1, 2, 3s, they will always sing to you. Look and see whether in this accumulation there are legitimate 1, 2, 3s. Pull them out. Find a permanent home space for them and put them away. And maybe Maybe that's the most you do on that day when you've got little to bring to the table. All right. But every time you do that, then the next day, go back at it, or maybe later on in the day when you're feeling a little more energized, go back at it. Now look for one of the 7, 8, 9, 10s, something that when you look at it, you just know it's not even a friend. Forget a best friend. All right, come on. And you know that. You listen to the internal dialogue. It'll never lie to you. All right. And if it is a 7, 8, 9, 10, take it and move it on somehow. All right. But don't be satisfied to accept being disabled by being overwhelmed. Just chunk it down and do one thing, but keep moving. Keep in the game. All right. So, because if you don't, and you keep just going at it, you'll freeze up, you'll get blocked. All right. And then you're caught in a loop. Indecision. Don't let that happen. Okay. Ask yourself the questions and don't ask yourself the questions that only lead to more questions. You know that when you're not coming up with the answers. If a pattern repeats itself and it's not leading you anywhere, stop the pattern. Do anything else but. Okay. All right. So if you feel you need some support, go back to one of the podcasts. Heaven knows there's enough of them. Listen to the podcast. Maybe listen to the podcast while you're doing something. All right. It'll give you guidance. It will remind you that you're not alone. Every week we have sometimes 50, sometimes 75 people show up from all around the world. You're not alone. All right. And there's nothing, you're not broken. You're stuck. All right. Everybody's got something, and you could do a whole lot worse having something than hoarding disorder, or even just hoarding behavior. Things could be a lot worse. There are a lot worse things. All right. So ask yourself now, are you frustrated and overwhelmed? All right. Do you feel like you're in a fog? Do you feel when you're making decisions like your head's spinning? Perhaps you're feeling increasingly worse about yourself. Maybe there are pressures on you, all right, that aren't making you feel very good about yourself. Promise yourself one accomplishment today and do your best, all right? If you find that you're going in circles, all right, and you want to get out, what do? Slow down, take a deep breath, hydrate yourself, oxygenate yourself, and get a guide. Podcast, the book, the audiobook, some other motivation. And if this has been a pattern that's repeated itself for some time, and I know for some of you it is, reach out for hoarding help, especially try to make it hoarding informed help as well. Any help is not equal. People need to understand hoarding, all right, as a behavior and as a disorder in order to offer you effective. And I'm not the only one. I'm not trying to drum up business here, all right? But make sure people understand hoarding, or that they have a genuine respect for other people, and that they aren't people who think that they have all the answers, or that they believe they've got the answers for other people. You've got your own answers. Deep down inside you, you know what the answers are. Your help is, the help you need is to help you find those answers and use them, put them into practice for yourself. All right. So let me have a look here. What we want is we want you to live in an environment that supports the life you want to have. All right. Is your environment right now, look around, the goal, the long-term goal. Sometimes when you're overwhelmed and you're slowing down, you're taking a deep breath, okay, all of that. In that time frame, just sit and look around you. Does this environment work for you? Does it support the life you want to have? And if it doesn't, go to the podcasts. Be sure to show up here. Send me an email, elaine.birchall@hoarding.ca. All right. Somehow I'll make whatever the block is that you're experiencing the subject of an upcoming podcast. All right. Help is available. There's no reason to stay stuck. So let's talk about misconception number 8. I don't hoard. I'm not a hoarder because I'm not as bad as the people on the TV shows. Let me tell you a little bit about the TV shows. All right. A number of years ago, I got a call from the Dr. Oz show, and they wanted, hoarding is rated 1 through 5, and 5 is the most serious. They definitely were only interested in a 5, a person with a hoarding disorder to the point of being the worst. And they wanted that person to go down and be interviewed by Dr. Oz on television, unsupported. All right. They were offering intensive counseling. And I said, well, that's something. By whom? They didn't know. I said, okay, well, would you define intensive counseling? And they said, well, as long as it takes us to do the show. And I said, how long does it take you to do the show? About 3 days. And I said, there's no definition of intensive counseling or even useful counseling that is intensive in 3 days. I said, so after you outed people on international television, all right, because we're not the same here. Canada is slightly different. What's in it for them? Because now everybody who has ever watched Dr. Oz or watched the reruns, their face is on it. Not a good feeling. And they said, well, dead silence. And I thought to myself at the time, this is not a good sign. They haven't even thought about what's in it for the other guy. And they said, well, I don't know, maybe a few appliances. And I said, you do realize it'll take 3 days to get to where the appliances go for somebody who is living with hoarding disorder at a level 5. So you don't, on the TV shows, all right, you don't see all the rest of the house that doesn't get. They focus on one area, 1 or 2 areas, and they make it seem like they've turned around the whole environment, which often leaves people feeling really incompetent, because if they could do it, maybe they only need somebody to come in and turn it around for them. No, they don't. They need somebody to partner with you. You need someone to partner with you to turn your environment around in your own way, at your own pace, because that's the pace that you can maintain it at. And that's learning what your limitations are and what your strengths are. All right. So don't be guided by the TV shows. It's good television, but it isn't reality. All right. So many people watch those shows and say, oh, I don't hoard. I'm a collector, not a hoarder. I'm not one to tell you whether it's you hoard or whether you're a collector. That's for you to decide based on the 3 criteria for something to be a hoarding situation, but perhaps not. Hoarding is just a word. And truthfully, people, and I keep saying this, 22 years, some of the loveliest people I've ever met hoard, all right? But they still meet the 3 criteria for something to be a hoarding situation. And that is, There must be what most people would describe as an excessive accumulation and a failure to resolve that accumulation proportionately. So it's not one thing in, one thing out. Anybody who can live by the one thing in, one thing out rule has other problems. All right. But is there an excessive accumulation? And when you look at it, would you have to say to yourself, even if you didn't say to anyone else, is there a failure to resolve it? All right. Second, some or all of the living spaces can't be used for their intended purpose. Now that's where we go back to. Each thing we keep has to have a home space, and that home space has to be accessible, and it has to be where it will be used. Just because there's free space somewhere else doesn't mean that that's available space. That's called stuffing. All right. That's called stuffing. And if you can't figure out where something's home space is, just hold it and ask yourself, if I was looking for you, where would the first place be I'd look? And that's its home space, because that respects you. That makes it accessible. That makes it predictable. You will always look for it there first, because that's your system of understanding. All right. So some or all of the living spaces can't be used for their intended purpose, even though you may still be living in the environment. But even if you are living in the environment, you're usually making unusual adaptations in order to do so. All right. Third criteria, there's distress or impairment in functioning. Actively, somebody is distressed, even if it isn't the person living in the environment. And that active distress, even if that doesn't exist, even if the individual living in the hoarded environment isn't distressed, if somebody else who had a legitimate right to know the true condition of the property knew it, they would be distressed. All right. Now, this isn't everybody with an opinion. All right. This is family, supportive family, not judgmental. Friends, mortgage company, fire insurance company, bylaw if things are building up outside, property standards if you live in a multi-unit dwelling. Whatever is happening in your environment has, sooner or later, an impact on somebody else's environment. It could be animal control, pets are involved. It could be services for the elderly. It could be anyone with a legitimate right to know the true condition of the property. That criteria has been met. All right. So some of that distress might be passive because they don't know. That doesn't mean that that criteria hasn't been met. So let's move forward a little bit here. All right. So the reason that I offer, today I was sitting here thinking, okay, another day, another podcast. It's great. I'll get to see everybody. That's great. And then I thought, so what is the reason for this? What is the motivation behind it? And I realized the reason I offer this podcast every week and that I insist on it being free of charge is that no one can be excluded. All right. If they're prepared, but here's your part of the bargain. All right. Because it probably takes me 2 days to organize and set this podcast up. All right. And it takes Braden a fair amount of time to edit all my little blips. Your part is to be prepared to make the effort, to join in, but also to consider the information that's offered and to take responsibility for going back to the podcasts when you encounter a situation that is troubling you, and look for a podcast that deals with not just hoarding, but that extra factor that has become a barrier or an impediment. All right, that's your part. The other part that I'm counting on you folks for is that you are actually considering the information provided after the podcast ends. So it's not just showing up and listening and, oh yeah, that was interesting. And yeah, she said something and I'll take notes. It's that you actually are using this, following up. Okay, that's your part in this. So I'm happy to do my part, and I'm counting on you to do your part. Okay, now I want to spend, I hope it doesn't take 15 minutes, but I'm going to screen share because I want to show you something. And I hope that I can do this successfully. There we are right here. Okay, and I think this is the one here. Can you folks see that? This is one of the twins. And this is our CPAP. Look at how complicated it is. And we went for the Cadillac version, upgraded everything to be not just basic. I'm going to close that one down, and I'll show you one of the nurses. Come here. This is one of the nurses taking care of one of the babies. Again, our illustrious CPAP machine. I can't get over the complexity of it. And there's something up here, maybe. Oh, that's the same nurse, just bending over a little more. Okay, so why don't we have about 10 or 15 minutes. Why don't we open up the floor and see, oh, how do I do that now? I should be able to. I got to stop screen sharing. That's what, stop sharing. There we go. Okay, so why don't we open up? We've got 38 people here today. Why don't we open up the microphones? Does anyone have a question or a comment or a whatever?
I do. This is
Okay.
Anne.
Hi, Anne.
Thank you so much for focusing on all of this, Elaine. It really feels like something I can break down enough to get in there. There was a point where I think you had mentioned that sometimes you do have regrets if you throw something out. And I wanted to ask you how I deal with that, because it seems to me that when I have regrets, it triggers this enormous shame, which feels like a trauma reaction. And I want to do it. And often the fear of regret and that, ensuing shame is what makes me not get rid of stuff that feels like I could live without it, because I'm so afraid of the regret.
Okay. And so the shame and the regret are tied to something else, and that is in your history. It's not part of this item. It's an internalized combination of meaning that you have in some other form, in some other way, at some other time formed. And it might be, I don't know whether this is true or not, but generally, as we're growing up, our parents teach us, or somebody teaches us, kind of the rules of life and what's expected. And if we waste, or if I can remember being told so many times, you have to eat that up because there are children starving, and there's always a child starving somewhere. And to this day, I have to fight the urge, like literally, it's got nothing to do with hoarding. I have to fight the urge to feel the responsibility to finish that plate, and we didn't have to take it. Okay. We didn't have to take the food. There were rules, and this may sound completely disjointed, but it isn't. It's fundamental. Somewhere back there's a connection where if you made a mistake, all right, and you actually regret, just because you regret something doesn't mean you made a mistake. I I still think about that dressing table that was so beautiful that I decided I had, I wonder where that is. And I hope somebody's being really good to it. And, I could go on and on about the dining room table and the whole, just because you regret it doesn't mean it's wrong.
Okay.
And doesn't mean the shame, though. That's an interesting thing to connect. I'm betting somewhere back, you were taught that if you did something that was wrong or that you regretted, you should be shamed for making a mistake.
Okay.
But I think that when you really sit back and you go, I do regret it. However, and I miss it, but that doesn't make it a mistake. That doesn't make it wrong. That choice is a choice that is appropriate for life today.
Right.
And where I'm going, not holding on to everything I've ever had just in case, like I've got some kind of insurance policy and I'm going to be ready for whatever comes,
Right.
so that I never have to feel I've made a mistake. I can't tell you how many times that I have let something go, and 2 weeks later, for the first time ever, I needed it. All right. But you know what? Duh, it is the 9th of August and I survived.
Right.
Because there's something. Oh, shut up. Siri, be quiet. Oh, sorry. Siri just talks back. She's so opinionated. So all I'm saying is that you combined two things which are not connected.
Okay.
Okay. Go back and figure out where that connection, the shame, all right, came from. And then whoever's face is on that, quietly, I want you to sit, even if they're not with you anymore. I want you to sit them down in a chair symbolically, and I want you to tell them how out of proportion and out of perspective, all right, that reaction is, and that they've created this loop that you get stuck in, and it's not helpful, and it's not appropriate to your life today. If you have everything from the past, Anne, you don't have, the truth is, it's impossible. If you own Buckingham Palace and had all the space in the world, it's impossible for you to have the space for tomorrow.
Okay.
All right. And so you talk to that person and tell them they were wrong. Shame is not involved with making a mistake. Even if it was a mistake and you've survived, you're resilient. All right. And yes, we will part with things. And yes, sometimes we will feel sad and we will regret it. But those things are not part of what we need today moving forward.
Okay.
All right. So it still is the right answer for you.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you so
Anytime anybody has a shame reaction, that you don't own that unless you deliberately hurt yourself or somebody else deliberately. That shame reaction is inappropriate. You've been taught that somewhere, and I want you to hunt that person down in your mind, no matter how good they were to you, no matter how important they were to you in your life. And I want you to have a come to truth moment conversation with them where you hand that back to them.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is great. Thank you.
Anybody else feeling brave? Nobody else is feeling brave.
I raised my hand. Hi. I don't know if I'm feeling brave, but I'm feeling the gift of desperation, which is God, right?
Mm-hmm. Or whatever you
private
believe in,
chat,
or whatever power you believe in that is
higher
your
power,
center.
divine, universe, everything other than me. Because
Well,
I got myself here.
yeah, you're
not
part of
fun.
it.
So
you're part of it. That you can.
What I wrote you in the.
Go ahead.
Okay. What I wrote in the private chat was my daily living activities and essential stuff, like all the essential areas of my home, are completely hoarded and slovenly I mean, just like these horrible words of this nightmare, so far from the vision of my life. And I've been an extremely expressive of purpose person in the world. It's very difficult for me. And there have been some disability things, but I was just writing down and taking an inventory of my bedroom, the bed, the closet, the desk. One of them, the shower can't be used. The floor is a mess. The sink counter.
Can
The other
you-
one, the
can you
toilet's
hear-
broken.
Ashla, can you hear yourself right now?
Yes.
I feel like I'm carrying, no, I'm not blaming you. It's just, I feel like I'm carrying a load on my back with you adding and adding and adding and adding. Pick one of those small areas today
Right.
and do something. Don't look at number 1, number 10, number 20. Don't look at those right now. That's
Right.
overwhelming. Pick number 0.5. Okay, something that is a small job, and give yourself the right to feel proud of yourself by the end of today by resolving that little 0.5. And tomorrow pick another 0.5. And every day pick up 0.5, and you will get there. When you do that to yourself, I had just a vision of you carrying this on your back till you're bent over, all right, from the weight of it. You've got to stop overloading yourself. Whatever it is true. If you tell me your environment is in that condition, you're telling me the truth. But unless you bring help in to help you resolve that, you're going to have to resolve that yourself, right? To be safe and to have the life you deserve to have. Pick a 0.5 and don't look out at the horizon. You look at the 0.5 in front of you and reward yourself for accomplishing the 0.5 repeatedly. The other trick though, Ashla, and this is true for everybody. So while you're resolving the little bit in front of you, all right, on your way to a larger resolution, today, don't leave anything behind that becomes tomorrow's work. When you do that, you have a real winning combination. And say to yourself, like I say to myself, 25 times a day easily, I'm not exaggerating, Elaine, just do it now. It never gets easier. The other thing I say to myself is, Elaine, there is no just for now. There is no later. Later never comes. There is no just for now. No.
Can I add one positive thing?
Mhm.
I'm reaching out for support. I only wrote this down to have like a clear inventory without judgment, just noting how it is right now. I'm reaching out for support. And today is an example. I did a lot of digital decluttering to make more space on my phone so it works better. And I literally, instead of stepping, I can see a clear 2x6 area next to my bed where I just picked up papers instead of
Good.
stepping on them.
Good.
So some of
Good.
them were trash and some of them I put aside to sort later.
You've
So
already
instead of
started.
like stepping on stuff,
Yeah.
I'm clearing like, an inch by an inch space.
Mhm.
Just
An inch
better
by
and
an inch
better.
adds up. That reminds me of something you saying that, Ashla, for everyone, and that is, I want you to really develop an alarm bell in yourself. Anytime something hits the floor, that is exceptional. All right, that's exceptional. Papers fall on the floor, books fall on the floor, you put them on the floor, that's exceptional. That represents a risk longer term. So anything that's on the floor should be, unless it's near a heat source, unless something is near a heat source that is combustible, all right, then I want that to register. That can never feel normal, because that's the easiest point for you to resolve that right in the moment and not have to come back to it. It's the continually having to come back to it that gets you. Okay, I'm going to try. I've got 2 other people. Somebody, okay. All right. So Christine,
Yeah, I hold on to a lot of things that I don't need right now and might need someday because I'm chemically sensitive. And so things that I have right now are already safe for me and are already outgassed, and buying them again would be very expensive. So is there a way of talking myself out of that? Because like I'm holding on to like a toilet for toilet training a kid that I might have be able to foster someday, but I'm not fostering right now, and I just don't know if I could get a safe one that doesn't smell fragrance if I were to try down the road to get another one.
well, I didn't always believe this, but I'll tell you, I'd have to be really, really blind, all right, to and I'm not, to what I've learned. So I don't know that this is the truth, but it has been played out so many times for me and my clients. The universe provides what you need when you need it in the order you need it if you're awake and listening. All right. I can't tell you how many times a client has said to me, I need this. And I swear within 2 weeks, somebody else is going to say, you know what, I've got this extra and I need the space. And it just trusting that if that particular thing wasn't available, something else equivalent would be. Now, maybe not in the instant. All right, this isn't magical thinking. You might have to go looking for it, but it's not the only scent-free toilet seat that would be available. You could put, just trusting that when you need the space for the life today and the life as far as you can see it, that is the priority. All right. And trusting that the universe is going to take care of you. Look at those 2 little babies. All right. And I just look at those 2 little babies. All right. Things happen every day in this world that there is a plan. We have to work the plan. It's not we sit there, somebody's going to hand it to us. God Almighty's going to hand it to us, or whoever you believe in is going to No, you actually have to be awake and listening. And you have to do your bit. But it's amazing how. And the other thing too, Christine, is there any guarantee that by the time you need that toilet seat or whatever else there is, all right, that you're going to be as chemically sensitive as you are right now? And so it's like insurance, all right? And just have an honest talk to yourself about the things you convince yourself. Because here's the other thing. You're not giving up the hope or maybe even the plan that you will have a child, or you will foster a child, or, okay, you're not giving up the hope just because you give up the toilet seat. That's still within your purview to do that. And giving this thing up doesn't mean you're giving up the dream or the plan or the right. Okay? Just careful what you connect things to. Having the child is not connected with the thing, because that thing is not, there is nothing short of people in your life that you love that is so exceptional that there won't be another way to get it.
Yeah.
When the time is right.
Just that extra challenge of like, but it's fragrance free, it's so rare. And
Yeah,
that gets stuck where it's like, but it's in the middle of the hallway.
I know. Yeah, yeah. Make today's space fit for today, and whatever we need in some form, all right, will will be available in maybe some form that is even better by that time. Okay, so Wendy, I think Wendy, yeah, Wendy had her hand up. Wendy, where are you? There you are. Okay. You
Hi,
wanna-
Elaine. Hi,
Hi.
everyone. I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate all you do. I always leave these sessions happy, motivated.
Good.
I plan, I organize. I'm like a squirrel. I put things in a pile of likes together, but then something happens. I procrastinate. It becomes the point where I get a block. I can't let things go. And it's just
Yeah.
letting go. And
Yeah.
the anxiety builds and the pressures of deadlines creep up. And then I get to the point where I just say, I'll wait. And this isn't just with precious things. This can be recycle. This can be leaf
Oh,
bags. This can be clothes. This can be
okay.
paper balls. It's letting go of anything. I can organize like a squirrel, but
Mhm.
when I go to do it, I have to check everything over carefully, so
So,
carefully and so meticulously, so time consuming, so much.
Hey,
somebody needs to mute themselves. Okay, somebody needs to mute themselves. Yeah. Would you check? Thank you.
So
Um,
when I
So
go to,
Wendy, Wendy, I'm going to give you
Sorry.
a suggestion, two suggestions actually. The first is I want you to get a book. It's called Procrastination. Where's my Bible here? I didn't write it, but it is a jewel. It's by Lenora Ewan and Jane Burka. Procrastination, I think, is why you do it and how you can stop now. That's number one. Okay. Number two, that point at which you said, I'm all ready to let it go, and then I've got to go through it. And that loop of going through it endlessly, or over and over again, presents a barrier. Generally, I don't know you well enough to say this specifically to you, but that raises an alarm bell in my mind that you may be living with a high degree of perfectionism. All right.
yes,
And perfectionism is hand in glove. Okay. Hand in glove with procrastination. It's like A and B. Yeah, and there's an equal sign between them. So do get that book, because, and also go back in the podcast, because I think I've done, gosh, 2 or 3 podcasts based on Jane Burka and Lenora Ewan's book. I can't say it any better, and they are the experts on procrastination. And procrastination is been given a bad rap, frankly. It is not the failure to do something. Procrastination. It is the, how to explain it? It is an actual choice. All right. Procrastination is an actual choice. But that choice is being made in order to avoid something that for that person is even bigger and worse. Now, if you're caught in a loop with perfectionism or some degree, okay, some degree of OCD, and that's a continuum, right? If you're caught in that loop, you need help to get out of that. And the start would be the podcast. And then you sit down and you commit Jane Burka and Lenora Ewan's book to memory. All right. Because it is the guide to understanding procrastination and to getting past it. All right.
Can you name that book again, please?
Yeah, it's Procrastination. Hold on, where are you? Maybe I loaned it to somebody. Procrastination, and I think it's why you do it and how you can stop now. But you're looking for Burka, Burka, and Yuen, Yuen. That's it right there. Christine, Shauna has it up on the screen. It's my Bible. I can't say it better.
I appreciate that so much. It's just I'm like frozen with fear.
Yeah.
I'm stuck.
You're going to see yourself in that book so many ways. And yeah, you're going to see yourself in so many ways in that book. And really, it's an excellent tool to, now I'll give you a little hint. All right. Okay. So I've had a lot of feedback, and feedback I've had about the audiobook. We will delete this from this podcast. Is that the voice on the person reading the book is irritating. So you may not enjoy the audiobook version, but the print version is the Bible. All right. So.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm going to run now. You folks take care. If there are things that you want to have a podcast on, put them in the chat. I look at the chat every week, and I plan from there. All right. Take care, everybody. Have a great week. See you next week. Bye.